Hi, my name is Bryndis Whitson, and you're listening to the Zebras to Apples podcast, the fun and fascinating stories of supply chain logistics. Fires, floods, tsunamis, hailstorms, earthquakes, and volcanoes, they're all over the news. They truly impact all of us, and sometimes when we least expect it. When an emergency occurs, are we prepared? What do we do to make sure that we're ready? As those of us in Girl Guides or Scouts would say, the old motto, be prepared. My guest for this episode is my friend Steve Armstrong. He has spent his career making sure that institutions and organizations are prepared. Steve and I met when I was hosting a conference entitled Ready at a Moment's Notice, the logistics of the military and emergency preparedness, which is exactly Steve's career. He has worked in the military, with government, the Red Cross, and is a leadership expert and consultant, as well as an instructor at Mount Royal University. This interview was recorded in 2024 before the LA wildfires. When an emergency occurs, logistics experts are there to assist in the crisis, the cleanup, and the rebuild. Please join me on this conversation with Steve Armstrong. Part of the way we met was you were working at the Red Cross, but previously before that, you'd worked in the military. You've had a lot of different experiences. Maybe let's start with just kind of a broad overview.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So it's been a checkered history, Bryndis, I would say. I was kind of asked to leave high school because my guidance counselor suggested if I wasn't doing anything, I shouldn't do it there. And I had been a member of the Army Reserves at the time, and then full-time service after that. Luckily for me, because I didn't have much education and ended up working through a 22-year Army career, ending up in 98, 99 retiring as a acting RSM and Sergeant Major. Mm-hmm. And then I spent 3 years in the Northwest Territories in a remote community, fly-in community with a winter road for a few months of the year called Norman Wells as a town administrator, town manager. And then I joined Red Cross the January of 2001, and I remember that distinctly because when I was hired, I was told it was going to be a quiet, simple job, that we were to gear up and mobilize and train volunteers to be prepared to respond. And if anyone's even remotely aware, 2001 was the September 11th terrorism attack in New York City. And
quite the timing.
Yeah, and there was also a papal visit and a big flood in the northwest or northern Ontario on James Bay. And that just launched this unbelievable trajectory into emergency and disaster management, and part of which included most every big disaster in Canada over those 12 years or so, including a few trips to the States for both September 11th and then hurricanes, and then almost a year in Sri Lanka post-tsunami, doing recovery work there for most of the tsunami was, if you can imagine, was 20 years ago this Christmas coming. Yeah. And so most of 2005, I spent time both domestically and then internationally working on the tsunami response. And then I ended up at the end of Red Cross. I was in charge of all of our operations in Alberta, Northwest Territories. Coincidentally was Slave Lake, and a bunch of big disasters here. We made the headlines several times in Alberta as disaster central. And then retiring after the Southern Alberta floods, 2013. And then since then, I've been working as a consultant and a speaker and educator and coach around leadership and organizational issues for the last 10, 11 years.
Great.
So yeah, it's quite a career.
Very much so.
My guidance counselor would crap her pants if she knew what became of me.
And the country's better for it.
Well, I had played a small part in a lot of little things, and as does everybody. Everybody plays their part. That's
exactly, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you were in the military, for what you can share, is there kind of any moments or something like that that kind of stick out of interesting or fascinating moments that...
Oh my gosh. Your podcast would have to be 3 years long to regale you with a lot of those stories.
We can always continue this. Yeah.
No, there was lots. The the Army, I was an infantry soldier, so that is the boots on the ground soldiering. I was a pretty good soldier, I would say, and developed significantly competent as a leader. And we were forever either getting ready to deploy or being deployed wherever that might look like, either through a training operation or actual operations. A lot of this stuff maybe nobody knows or nobody cares, but when you send soldiers into harm's way, you have to make sure they're as trained and fit and strong as they possibly can be.
Exactly.
And as well equipped as you can make them and get them to go deal with things. I would say the interesting part, maybe most relevant to maybe what you're thinking about, was, in Bosnia and Croatia and in the early 90s, and then even into Afghanistan, although I was out before Afghanistan. The way the Canadian Army was deployed a lot was small units dispatched to remote, isolated places. So they were disconnected from the larger unit.
Oh, completely.
Yeah. So, a corporal could mistakenly start the Third World War, right?
Yeah.
So you had to train people to be leaders and have them, as, like I said earlier, prepared and educated and as smart as you can possibly get them to be, to make sure that they could manage in these isolated pockets. Like, some of the movies that have been done, mostly based on American stories in Afghanistan, where sergeants and platoon level 30, 40 soldier teams being on a fire base or an outpost out in the middle of nowhere, dealing with a very complex, challenging situation.
Exactly. And then getting all the other stuff out there and getting them there, let alone.
Getting them there, and they have... So if you imagine, you got 40... So a ration pack, a field kit, if that's what you're eating on a specific operation, comes in a box about maybe the size of probably not as big as a laptop, maybe about the size of a pad of paper, and 3 or 4 inches thick by 8 by 10 sort of thing. And that's one meal. So you got 40 people.
Right, and only one meal.
And that's one meal. 40 people times 3 meals every day, all the time. Right. Every day.
And making sure you have enough to...
Yeah, and make sure there's enough there to make sure people can eat, have food, if for whatever reason the resupply lines are cut off. So I don't have a full sense about what happened in Afghanistan, but in my time in the military, a soldier carried at least 1 day's worth of food. And then the next level of food chain, up the supply chain and the command chain, carried the next day's worth of food, and it went up and up. So it was always a push of food out.
Right.
And the same thing with ammunition and or boots and or clothing and a million little things, like even toilet paper. You can't function very well in the field if you don't have proper sanitary conditions in toilet paper.
Exactly. Well, we were in Normandy. There was actually one of the various different monuments and stuff like that. And in this one, they actually recognized all of the other groups that were behind the troops, like the dental, the payroll, all those extra.
So, like soldiers, you can do a lot to a soldier, but you got to feed them and you got to make sure they get paid or they stop working for you. And it's even, they always said that it was at least a 3-to-1. So for every fighting soldier on the front lines, there was at least 3 people supporting that person. Right. Which is probably low, I would think.
I would think so, because there's so many different pieces.
Yeah. Like all the way back. So the logistics of an operation like that is actually mind-blowing.
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing too. And so, in the military and stuff like that, good training for the rest of, parts of your career too. So.
Oh, for sure. Well, the one thing that I would say that before we move on to some of the other parts, is the one thing the military does, and it's a leadership, it ties into more leadership development, but also supply chain, is that you cannot become a commander or a leader in the military without doing some of these other jobs. Right. So if you could be a rocket scientist, Teflon coated, super fit rifleman, infantry soldier or a tank driver or whatever. But to get promoted, you have to go work in the supply chain, and you have to go work in the administrative side of it, and you have to work in the transport side of it. And then you will eventually get to the position where you get promoted up into a command level position. So you don't become a boss without learning about how does the toilet paper get to the front lines.
Exactly. Knowing all the little pieces.
Yeah. Or at least, at least having some experience in that, so that you have a sense, okay, it takes a day for something like this to happen. So
or that's what someone else does.
Yeah. So that's a strength of at least most Western armies is that you just don't, just because you're smart and bright doesn't mean you become a boss. You have to be exposed and modestly competent in some of these other functions.
Yeah.
So that you understand when you're making command decisions and lives are at stake, that you understand how things happen behind the scenes.
And how everything interacts with each other. Like one piece affects every other part of the operation.
Yeah. It's not complicated, but it's complex.
Right.
Right?
But having that knowledge adds that extra big, huge piece.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you can say, I want this to happen, and there's no hope in all the blue skies in all the world that could happen the way you want it to, because all the back office hasn't caught up with you. There's a great book, I want to say it wasn't Petraeus, that's not right, but it was called Moving Mountains. And it was so General Norman Schwarzkopf was the commander of Allied forces for the first Gulf War in the early 90s. And his logistics chief was a lieutenant general. I can't remember his name. And he ended up writing a book called Moving Mountains. And it's quite interesting about the logistics behind the first Gulf War. And at one point, if I may make a mistake on this exactly, but at one point he said that it cost 7 gallons of fuel to get 1 gallon of fuel to a tank in the front line.
Oh. Well, yeah, when you think about it, because you got to get it there.
Got to get it there. And then you got to get
the weight and the...
Yeah, and you got to get it across the desert, and you got to get it into a fighting vehicle of some sort at the front.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And all the ways that, you get there. Like, I remember seeing a video of moving jet fuel to the middle of Antarctica, and just like the amount that it costs, or just moving that one piece just to get there.
Oh, no, it's unbelievable when you think about it. So if you don't appreciate that, and you think, well, I have a battalion, I've got 40 tanks at the front line, I want them to move. There's a lot of things that have to fall into place, right? And even if you consider in a disaster setting, was my second career, the cost of, like if you look at Jasper right now.
Yeah.
So they're saying that there's going to be temporary homes for people. Well, it's going to take months and months and months to get those. First off, you have to find them. You could have trailers. Trailers are not suitable to a Canadian mountain winter.
Right.
So like in a disaster setting, if you look at the recent fires in Jasper, they say like 40% of the residents' homes were lost in fire. The government is well intended in saying, well, we're going to have temporary housing there for them. But, they have to find housing for hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah.
They have to move them to Jasper. And a camper, the average human camper is not suited to being outside through a Canadian winter in the mountains. So it has to be a building of a certain standard that can withstand the winter and not freeze solid.
Exactly. And
you have to have a sewer system, and you have to have a water system, and you have to have propane for heat, and
yeah, the electricity, everything has to be there.
And land. You have to have a piece of land that you're in a national park. So the complexities of something like that are equally insurmountable, or maybe not insurmountable, but equally challenging and complex as maybe a combat operation.
Especially finding the space, because you have to really allocate those spaces too. So
yeah, and there isn't space.
No.
Most people wouldn't realize that in a national park, if there's a town in a national park, they are completely confined by their boundary of the municipality. And you just can't bulldoze trees out of the way and start another subdivision somewhere else. When I was interviewed a few times earlier about Jasper, there's another town in British Columbia in summer of 2021 called Linton that burnt to the ground. So
Right.
that was 200 or 300 homes that were completely evaporated, incinerated, and turned to dust.
Right.
Some have been rebuilt, but imagine how long it takes to build a subdivision in a modern urban city like Calgary or Toronto or Montreal of 250 homes. It takes years.
Yeah.
It takes years.
Mm-hmm.
And you basically have to start from scratch because you can't trust any infrastructure under the ground.
Right.
It went through
Because it has to restart. Everything has to be rebuilt.
Yeah. Because you don't know what happened under the ground in this gigantic inferno that tore through this town. So for someone to say that these homes will be up and built and ready in a matter of a few months is a well-intended lie.
Mm-hmm. Well, you look at Linton, and years later, it's still taking, It
takes forever.
Mm-hmm.
It takes forever. And people, that's just the logistics of it. And then you have the human impact of it, that people will move on.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I always remember, too, is that one of the workshops we had, and it was a mayor of a town that had fire, and said that they were really good at giving out, information of like what will happen next. And because as we go through these national disasters or fires or floods or something like that different things occur. And what they said was the first year, this is this, and this is what you need to invest in. And in the second year, it's the mental health supports, because it's the second year when you need that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can start, when you look at other things that have occurred on global or national scales, or local scales, you see that piece too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's so complicated. Like the infrastructure part can all be fixed. It takes time.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got people involved with this story too, right? And their emotions and their feelings. And, right now there's people in these towns that have been incinerated across the world, specifically North America and Canada, who there could be one home left in a block that for some reason didn't get burned up. Mm-hmm. And they're in their house looking out their window every day at their neighbors.
Right.
Gone.
Yeah.
And then maybe in a couple of years, they'll look out their window at their neighbors and see these big, modern, fancy new homes built on the old lots. Mm-hmm. And then they'll be going, well, I'm still in my old house.
Yep, exactly. And the difference is there too, because one has insurance, the other is there because it's,
Well, and that's, you're exactly right. That's on the premise that everybody has a level of wealth and a level of insurance and a level of protection that
very
they
much
can
so
get over this, and not everybody does.
Yeah.
There's people that lived in Jasper for, whatever. I saw there was a person that was on the news the other day that had lived there for 40 years. Well, when they bought their house 40 years ago, it wasn't a $1.5 million piece of property. It was a $20,000 piece of property. And they may only have had insurance on it because they needed a mortgage of $25,000. That they could be woefully underinsured to rebuild their home.
Oh, completely.
And they're probably old and retired, so they don't have wealth. Their runway is quite short for recovery because you're old, right? Maybe if you're 20 and you lose everything, you still got 40 years to work to recover. But if you're 60 or 70 or whatever, you don't have that length of time to recover. So for people to get over that is super challenging, really hard on the community and mostly on individuals.
Well, even when we look at what happened in Port aux Basques and the housing and stuff like that, and they were saying, well, there's nowhere we can live because all the houses were taken. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And you need housing for the workers. You're going to need a small army of workers showing up to build this house. And if you want to think about the logistics of it and the supply chain of it, so Jasper is, I forget, maybe about a 3 to 4 hour drive from Edmonton, maybe best part of a half an hour to an hour from the next biggest town, which would be a place called Hinton. And you have to transport everything, nails, screws, insulation, widgets, hammers.
And you've got a Canadian winter coming.
And you got a winter coming. And I don't know if you've ever done a home renovation project, there's always one thing you need that you got to run back to the store for, which is now an hour, at least
minimum.
a 2-hour return trip at a minimum.
Yeah. And you still have to get it.
And you have to get it.
Yeah.
Because it might be small, but if you don't have it. But even simple things, like you think about that Jasper thing, like, gosh bless the city of Calgary, like they opened up a reception center for, but nobody did the math. So if you leave Jasper in the middle of the night and you have to go west through BC, at best it's a 5-hour drive, I guess, maybe. But if you got to go, the only way out is to go west through the mountains of BC, it becomes a 14-hour drive.
Right. Which is why there's,
Yeah, whatever, give or take. You leave at 2 in the morning, 2 plus 14 is at least supper time the next night. And then you got to stop for gas and food. All those people looking for gas from the next little rinky-dinky town is good luck.
Yeah.
And then you show up in the Calgary, people close the reception center at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock because they said, well, nobody's here tonight. Well, it took 20 hours to get there.
Yeah.
Like it was a math problem that somebody never thought about.
True. Yeah. It totally, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's a simple, it's at the broadest definition of supply chain. It was a relatively simple problem to at least think through, but I don't want to be too critical because nobody's like they would never even thought about it. Oh, we've been here all day and nobody showed up.
Right, because you're not thinking about
the trip.
Exactly. And you also don't know where people are stopping along the way.
Oh, they have to stop, right? Yeah. You left their house at 2 a.m. You don't have anything. You're lucky if you have your wallet and maybe a toothbrush, right?
Yeah, completely.
And your kids and your dog and whatever it is. And you're hoping every gas station has full fuel tanks in it and you have money to buy gas. Like, the number of things that are complexities just to that little problem, which is a huge problem to the individual, is unbelievable.
Well, and even the gas issue, that's a totally thing you wouldn't think of because it's more of a northern remote town in BC. They only have limited supply. And suddenly,
So when I was in Norman Wells, we had this brainwave one year. I think it was 2000. So the snowbirds were coming.
Oh.
They offered to come. And we thought, oh, that's awesome. They want to come. So let's do it. And so we were putting all these plans in place for the snowbirds to do an air show in Norman Wells of a town of maybe there was 2,000 people in the whole region. Until the guy who had the fuel contract for the airport phoned up and he said, those guys will burn up our whole year's supply worth of fuel in 2 days. And there is no road. There is no pipeline. Like to bring fuel in. There is no way of getting fuel there. So we couldn't host the snowbirds because it would have taken at least a year in advance notice to pre-position enough fuel to have the snowbirds come. And those who are listening, the snowbirds are Canadian Armed Forces, Canadian Air Forces, acrobatic demonstration jets. So, and they burn up a lot of fuel.
Yeah. Right, because there's at least 10 or planes that they fly with.
And they're doing high-speed, super cool stuff, which is not efficient fuel burning, right?
Yeah.
So, it's, these communities don't have the level of resources even to do something nice, let alone to respond.
Yeah, completely. The one thing I remember you saying one of the presentations you did for some supply chain students is talking about how finding a space for the rubble or wherever and finding that extra space because it's one of those pieces of, when we think of emergency preparedness and, all of that kind of thing, we don't think of, well, where does the debris go once it leaves that spot? Yeah.
Well, first off, you have to have the equipment and people to move the debris. Even in Fort Mac at the Fort McMurray fires and even in Jasper, like the first thing people have to do is make sure it's safe. And then you have to move it. And a lot of it is actually considered hazardous waste. So it has to go to in North America, in Canada, it has to go to a special landfill because it's hazardous waste. It's heavy metals and whatnot in the ash of the burnt out house. But
and then you have to figure out the logistics of getting it from where you are to that spot.
Because you're not long filling up a dump, right? So, I don't know in Jasper where the landfill would be. I suspect likely it's outside of the national park someplace. But if you start taking the debris from 250 homes to a landfill, you're not long filling it up.
Yeah.
And Haiti, I can't remember exactly the stats, Bryndis, to be perfectly honest, but I would, you could fill the Sky Dome in Toronto like 50 times over with the debris.
Oh, completely.
And you're on a relatively small island.
Yeah.
So where does that go? And you just can't dump it in the sea.
No.
Where does it go? And you don't have the facilities there to recycle like you might have here, where you can grind up concrete and pavement and turn it back into concrete pavement. So it's a huge logistics nightmare.
Yeah. And then you have to either ship it if it's leaving the island, then there has to actually be a ship that's available that actually can fit it.
Yeah. And engineering, if you're going to put it someplace, like the Canadian Red Cross built a hospital in Haiti following the 2012 earthquake. And they did use a lot of the debris as the fill to build this hospital, but it takes unbelievable engineering to make sure that the ground is going to be stable so the hospital doesn't fall down.
Completely.
It certainly just falls down, period, but you're in an earthquake zone that caused the disaster in the first place, right? So the ground has to be stable and secured and engineered in a way that it's going to maintain the hospital that you're going to put on top of it.
And not crumble like it had previously.
So when somebody says, well, why isn't that being rebuilt faster? Well, that's an easy thing to say if you just think, oh, you got to put up a hospital. But it's never that simple. There's a million hoops to jump through. Haiti was a wee bit this way in that the Canadians and the Canadian Red Cross developed a collapsible house, prefab house that would fold down. You could knock it down flat and ship it, and then you could bolt it all together. But in Haiti, most land is owned by somebody somewhere. And if it was attached to a slab of concrete on the ground, it belonged to the ground and then belonged to the owner of the property.
Oh.
But if it wasn't built that way, it belonged to the person that you gave the house to. So we had to make sure that when we gave somebody a house, that they had the wealth. There wasn't a lot of money, but they had the asset of the house and could move it if they needed to. But as soon as you put it on concrete on the ground, it belonged to the landowner, and that family was at risk of being evicted at any second by an unscrupulous person.
That's totally things you don't think of.
Yeah, why would you think about that? Sri Lanka, when I was there, we were buying land for, I think our plan was to build 5,000 homes. Seems high, but something like that. If we bought a piece of land, the next day we'd be in court being sued by 11 people that had 11 completely legitimate looking title to deeds and one property. Because with the right amount of money, you could get a deed to anything.
Oof.
So the risk of putting a family in a home on a piece of property that title wasn't secure to, just put that family at a huge risk down the road.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So all of these things make it super hard. Interestingly, I think in Sri Lanka, I think this is where I got the 5,000 house number from Bryndis, but in Sri Lanka, they only built 5,000 homes a year. And we needed 50,000 homes after the tsunami. Not we, but the country did.
Yeah.
Needed to have...
Because they were all
destroyed. So if you imagine, if you have the economic and industry capacity to build 5,000 things in any given year, and all of a sudden you needed 10 times that built within a very short time, what does that do to the cost of everything? Labor, material.
Needing to bring people in to assist with the building.
Yeah. And when you have people that have if there's a lot of money in play and unscrupulous people in play, bad things are inevitably going to happen. Somebody's going to get taken advantage of somewhere along the way.
Oh, completely.
Yeah. So just, to build a house is not, when I'm talking about a house, we're not talking about a house in Canada. We're building a small 20 by 20, maybe 20 by 20 concrete or bricks house, one room, maybe 2-room house. Mm-hmm. So it's not complicated or hard, but you still need a certain level of capacity and skill to do it.
Yeah, totally. And these are things that you normally wouldn't think of in some respects.
Why would you until you go and try to do something?
Yeah. which is that piece that there's all the, or if we think back to that, the known unknowns. Yeah. And you don't know the things you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know until you're there. Now, lucky for me, I've had this amazing adventure in this big fun career based on the backs of millions of misfortunate people. Mm-hmm. I've seen these things happen.
Yeah.
So when my most recent deployment was on a contract to consult to the city of Merritt during the atmospheric floods in the fall of 2021. Yeah. And I was there for 5 months through the Christmas or January through the first part of the year, half of the year. So I knew maybe I didn't know the exact circumstances, but I knew something I knew all the things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
So I was able to advise and consult people on things like the landfill.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
You realize you have 600 homes worth of at least at best drywall and insulation from the basements, and sometimes whole houses that are going to have to go to a landfill.
Yep. And so, do you have the space, or do you
have the space? How are we going to manage this? Some of it is like a lot of these homes were older homes. Mm-hmm. Asbestos was and how do you manage that family that has to not only do they have to pay $10,000 to $20,000 to dispose of their home, they have to worry about asbestos and hazardous materials and
all those extra things gosh,
it's mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. And you're up to your eyeballs in trying to just survive.
Mm-hmm. Well, and in that situation too, there's also the sewage backup. There's the flooding. There's the mold that's starting to grow. There's the
it's terrible. Well, just a quick story. There was down the valley, downstream from the city, the town of Merritt, was a long flat valley called the Nicola Valley. Mm-hmm. Doesn't really matter, but there was a couple of farms that were organic farms. Mm. Well, as soon as the floodwater washed over their land with all of the crap that it took from upstream, they've lost their organic status.
Right. And that's what they did.
That was their livelihood.
Mm-hmm. Oh. And there's no way to...
You can't jump through that hoop again.
No.
I don't know exactly what became of those people, but I think it's like not insignificant. It's like you have to have 5 years clear or 10 years clear of organic, not using anything that's considered non-organic on your farm to have that classification.
Yeah. That's a huge way that, the impacts that you don't even, expect.
No. Again, wouldn't even think about it until afterwards.
Yeah.
And then there was this gigantic, huge, a monumental, unbelievable logistics and engineering success story by rebuilding the Coquihalla Highway. Coincidentally, the reason it was so successful and opened so fast, like entire bridges were washed out of that highway. Miles of highway were all tore apart. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the Trans Mountain Pipeline was being built through that same area, and they had all of this equipment there.
And the equipment was right there
on the side of the highway.
At the right period of time, ready to go.
So they reopened a highway that rightfully probably could have been closed for a year or longer. At least they got it operating again within a few months, which was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was hard to believe the amount of impact
But that was luck.
Yeah. And just the timing of one being right beside at that moment.
Yeah, that was unbelievable luck. And they were able to bring bridging equipment. They had bridges and Bailey bridges and temporary bridging and all sorts of stuff. They were just haul it up out of the pipeline and lay it down on the
because they were already building temporary bridges and stuff like that too. Yeah. So all of the right equipment was there at the right moment in time.
But down at the bottom of the mountain, where the town was, people were going, "Where's my help?" Mm-hmm. Now I get it. You got you got an economic corridor that's worth, I don't know what, hundreds of $1,000,000 a day or a week.
Yeah.
That's a priority. But then you got people down there trying to figure out how to dispose of their soggy insulation and drywall from their basement.
Right.
It creates an unhealthy dynamic, right?
Completely. It adds that parallels. Yeah. Yeah. But I think that timing of, like, it's amazing the impacts that the flood in Vancouver would happen. So at the time, our very old Siberian Husky only liked to eat one type of dog food.
Yeah.
And it came out of Chilliwack. And it was hard to find that dog food because of the fact that because of the atmospheric river, they had a hard time getting the meat coming out of Cargill near Brooks Strathmore in Alberta, going across, getting to the plant, making the product, and then coming back.
Yeah.
And I tried to source it. I tried to buy it directly from the company, and they were like, "We can't. This is the only places you can do." But it was but the impacts were a combination of COVID originally, and then you add the atmospheric river and the inability to drive across, either getting your products to or from, and so suddenly there's this shortage of this dog food.
Oh yeah, it was unbelievable. Well, even I recall. Was it Christmas? Couldn't get a turkey.
Right, because all the turkey farms.
The turkey farms are closed down. And even as a logistics headache, so eventually someone decided, well, we can go south from Vancouver into the States, across the States and back up into southern Alberta, which it adds time and money for sure. But the number of truck drivers that can't cross the border for whatever life story that they have is not insignificant.
No.
So if you can't cross the border, your drivers can't cross the border.
Or depending on the product inside the truck, it can't enter another space too.
Yeah, that's probably true too. I do believe that a lot of those things were kind of, ironed over between the two governments.
Completely.
But still, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's a complete nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an increased cost, time and energy and money, all that stuff. But just moving stuff around is not, anybody that tries to cross the border, just driving to the States or back is challenging, let alone trying to figure out how to get all these thousands of trucks that used to just drive from Vancouver to Calgary.
Completely.
So these things are completely hard, complex, right? It's like the ripple effect of a decision is the repercussions. Like if you look at Merritt, now Jasper, even in Fort McMurray and Buffalo, like the actual ripple effect of a single event that lasted maybe a day and a half ripples for 10 years
minimum. And then when you put it across multiple places and multiple times.
Yeah. I know it's a bit out of scope, but like eventually it's going to get to the point where you're not going to be able to buy even insurance for some of these communities and some of these places, because insurance companies are going to say, we're not doing that. You can't buy. There are lots of places in Florida, the number of insurance companies have abandoned the state of Florida because of hurricanes is unbelievable. So if you can't get homeowner insurance, you can't get a mortgage.
And you can't get, exactly, and you can't get all of those other pieces that you need to do to protect those houses. Right.
So it's the repercussions of some of these things. But yeah, it's, the beauty of it is, or the opportunity is, there's lots of opportunity.
And I think it's knowing what those pieces are so you can hopefully effectively, make a difference in people's lives. Yeah. And I think the quicker you put things together that are helped in those areas, I think that's pretty key. So
yeah, I think so. I think but the issue is, if we go back to the Coquihalla and the Merritt story, right? The government patted itself on the back and says what a huge success the response was because the highway's open. Yeah. But there's hundreds of people, individuals, that are struggling. Right. So it's how you talk about it and how you communicate it.
And how do we make sure that we're caring for everyone?
That's right. These are profoundly intimate human experiences. The worst kind of human experience. You lost your house. Yeah. You lost everything in your house. You wait till Christmas time when somebody goes to put up a Christmas tree and all their Christmas decorations, the baby's first whatever Christmas baubles are all melted in a heap in the bottom of a basement.
Yeah,
where their house used to be.
Exactly, or when the floods happen and it's all destroyed from that.
That's right.
Or all of those moments.
They're gone.
Yeah.
So I think how do we respect people in a way that honors that and helps them recover in their own way?
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing we have to make sure is when there's always a human aspect behind those moments, or if something happens that slows something else down, there's still a person at the end of that or something.
Yeah. So, I don't know who all is listed as, but you and I both live in the city of Calgary, and we just had a pretty miserable summer with a major water main burst.
Yeah.
Twice shut down and water restrictions. I don't know that, of course there'll be some people, but most people appreciate that stuff happens. And they have a high tolerance for stuff happening. But it's how are you talked to while that's happening.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I think a lot of people that were in charge of communications let lawyers get in the way of being human and talked about in a way that didn't expose the organizations involved to risk. And that frustrates people.
Yeah, and the more you can inform people.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big piece.
Yeah. You don't have to burst out in tears over it, but people want to have somebody just talk to them with a little empathy, that they understand that a mom with 2 or 3 little babies in a house may not have the privilege of not showering and bathing every day.
Yeah, exactly. We're having a little bit of a larger, laundry than someone else might.
Yeah, like it was an inconvenience to me. It wasn't bad, but if I don't have a house full of babies. How do we speak to people? How do we talk to them? How do we explain to people what's happening around them? If you're honest with people and you're forthright with people, they may not like the answer. Who wants to hear that answer? That's going to take months before something happens.
Yeah.
But they know, okay, thank you. Now I know I have to do my own thing here.
Exactly. And I think that communication truly is one of those key pieces and takeaways too of just, really caring for people.
Yeah. And even simple things. We were just talking about it with another client of mine just recently, was just tell them what's going on. Nobody wants to be surprised. Nobody wants to be let down. So if you pick up the phone the person up and say, this happened. We'll fix it. They're not going to be happy.
No, but I think people appreciate the honesty.
Yeah, and be a little bit empathetic to them. They'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate. There's so many more things that we can talk about too.
We could talk for days about
exactly.
Some of this
This is just the start. So yeah.
Well, Bryndis, it's been lovely. I hope it was helpful because it was quite a ranging.
Well, and that's the thing. We just see where the conversation kind of takes, because what people, it's supply chain logistics, but it impacts so many other things. And leadership is key. Communication is key. All of those pieces, whether it's in your industry of supply chain logistics or in another area, all of those pieces and each spot along the chain truly has an impact along. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And like I said earlier, it's not complicated at all, what we're trying to do. Move something from point A to point B or put somebody back in a house. That's fairly straightforward, but it's infinitely complex.
And exactly. And being aware as much as you can about any one of those factors. Or if we choose to do this, this might happen. If we choose to do that, that happened instead. That's
right. And it's so mercurial. There's a concept called wicked problems. I don't know if you're aware of the concept.
No.
It's mostly in social thinking. It's like the problem is so complex. You have anything you do will impact, and you have no idea how it's going to turn out down the road. So this problem is so amorphous and mercurial that every time you touch it, it moves.
Oh yeah.
And every input you do to try to address the problem, we could have a ripple effect years down the road that you can't even imagine. So it's quite an interesting concept.
Completely. And you make that one change and who knows what.
You have no idea what's going to happen next.
Completely. So it's just being aware of those pieces too. So
and know that, right? As Donald Rumsfeld, the once erstwhile Secretary of Defense for the United States government under the second Bush government, said there was things we knew, he said, and there was things we knew we didn't know, and there was things we didn't know we didn't know.
Yeah, with the known unknowns.
And that third thing is the one that's going to get you every time.
Yep. Completely. And that's what we got to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was great fun. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this Zebras to Apples podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed the showcase of the fun and fascinating stories of supply chain logistics. If you liked this episode, I would love it if you could give it a rating and review. For more information about this topic, you can go to zebrastoapples.com or follow Zebras to Apples on the social media platform of your choosing, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter X, Blue Sky, or LinkedIn. You can support the show on Patreon. Also, check out the show notes below. Please join me again for another episode of Zebras to Apples. Have a wonderful day.